My name is Alexa with the Clinician's Atelier and founder of Care Identity, and I'm really excited to have Dr. Kara Pepper with us today. I'll let her introduce herself.
Thanks for having me. Hi, well, I'm Kara Pepper. I'm a primary care internist in Atlanta, Georgia, primary care doc. Was in a commercial hospital-owned practice for the first 14 years of my career out of training. And then in the aftermath of COVID, stepped out on my own, built a solo practice that was 100% telemedicine. I grew it to 17 states, opened an in-person office, and now I'm expanding, hiring folks and doing a lot of education and a lot of outreach. And so it really feels like everything I wanted in a career just took me about 17 years out of training to get there. So it's great.
I love that. That's amazing. 17 states. Tell me a little bit, how did you transition from coming the commercial space into more of your solo practice when you first started?
I would describe it as kind of not a crash and burn, but like a slow sinking to the bottom of the pool. I knew in a very quiet moment, we all kind of stand around the water cooler, so to speak, and say, oh, I'm just so tired. This is so exhausting. Patients are driving me crazy. And we all kind of complain about it. But I found that I was surrounded with a bunch of people who weren't doing anything about it. And I really had this moment in an after hours meeting, like, 2 hours after work. And we're like talking about the same things we've talked about a million times. And I had this just like inner knowing, like, I can't do this anymore. More specifically, like, I won't do this anymore. Like, if I look back on this season in my life with aging parents and growing up kids and feeling the best I've ever felt in my 40s, like, this is not the life that I want. This is not what I worked for. So I knew that I had built the telemedicine line for my big 70 physician practice. And I knew that I could do that. And I had built a coaching practice already and had been working with physicians through burnout and said, it's not that hard. Like, I know how to manage like critically ill patients. Like, it can't be that hard to like figure this stuff out. And so I approached it as this like soft landing. But I don't think, even though I'm a physician who coaches other physicians, like, I didn't realize how burned out I still was after that. So I spent that first year building a practice, but at a pace that really regulated my nervous system and really allowed me to kind of return to the basics and build what felt great. And about a year and a half in, finally felt recovered enough to be like, I could push it a little bit. I could stomp on the gas and actually make something really awesome out of this. So here I am, 3 years in, just celebrating my 3-year anniversary and having the time of my life.
All that in 3 years, that's pretty impressive. Tell me, what kind of model did you start with? Are you in a membership-based model? Are you cash only per appointment? What's kind of your structure of your personal practice?
Yeah, it's pay as you go. Like old school medicine, you pay per appointment. So I had a lot of thoughts about that. I think there's some real grief and some mindset work that needs to be done by physicians who are making that transition, any clinician, because of course I want to be able to help everyone. So it was still important for me to have access for people who couldn't afford to pay cash. So I built the business model around 10% pro bono care. And honestly, I'm probably closer to 15% in what I'm doing. And I didn't like the idea of a concierge medicine practice, frankly, because I equated that to burnout. I was like, I don't want people to be able to get in touch with me 24 hours a day. That does not sound like fun to me. So concierge kind of felt out. And a direct primary care model, which many primary care physicians are going to, which is a subscription model, was the only other model that was really out there. But similarly, I do mostly eating disorder care and medically unexplained work like mast cell disease and Ehlers-Danlos and POTS. And so those patients need a lot of time and energy. And I knew that the model wouldn't really work if I had a practice full of that, unless I set the subscription price point high enough. So it made the most sense for me to say, listen, I'm here for whatever you need. But there's no obligation. I want you to feel in control and not trapped and not obligated. You want to see me once? Great. You want to see me every month? Great. So I really kind of returned that power back to the patients. It was part of the core value of autonomy and safety. So it's pay as you go, which still confuses people because they don't see a lot of doctors doing that. But I'm like, it's like going to a therapist. You just pay per appointment. That's all it is. So that's my model.
You're probably the first I've spoken to, besides therapist, right, that you mentioned, is you pay for it per appointment. Most of the physicians I've worked with or doctors that I work with are in the direct primary care model. But then I've also worked with a couple specialty care where they are still trying to navigate, do I do the subscription based? Do I also offer pay as you go? First off, I have it's like kind of a two-part question. One is, I would assume when you are pay as you go, you have to always constantly be getting leads, right? Because you don't have that membership base that, like, once you get to a certain panel, you just have those subscriptions, so to speak, or that membership base coming in every month. So tell me a little bit about that if you could.
Yes, to be clear, I have one location. I'm just licensed in 17 states, but I'm busy enough that I'm hiring another physician. I think the part that they don't teach us in training is marketing, among many other things. Having a very clear understanding of who is my ideal patient. Yes, I'm a generalist. Yes, I'm trained to take care of everything, but who do I love taking care of? And what is their journey from recognizing they have a problem to making an appointment, paying money, and seeing me in the office? Like, what does that look like? And you mentioned before we started recording this idea about relationships, and it's 100% about relationships. 100% of my referrals, with two exceptions from social media, but nearly 100% have come from therapists, dietitians, and patients referring their friends and family. And knowing that my ideal patient, who, if they have an eating disorder, they've got, they're super frustrated with their healthcare system. They are in Facebook groups. They are talking to their therapists. They're talking to their friends. They're talking to other healthcare professionals. And they're saying, like, who is this person? And so in the beginning, when I was building a practice, my currency for the first time in my career was time. I had never had time because I was drowning before. So I spent I still, even now, I mean, you market until you close a business, right? But I spent that first year really heavily just meeting with people. I had coffee dates nearly every day of the week. I had one-on-ones. I showed up at meetings. I spoke at conferences. I really made relationships the top priority because I know that I'll take great care of patients. I know that the things that I uniquely can solve for patients, they can't find anywhere else. And so developing those relationships so that when people said, who is someone that I can feel safe with, who is someone who is trauma informed, who is someone who understands eating disorders, I am the name that comes to mind. Someone had told me once that, there's basically three parts to marketing. Like, who are you serving? What are you actually doing for them? And why are you the person to do that? The what are you actually doing for them? I think a lot of clinicians get caught up in, like, I'm a doctor, I do coughs and colds and physicals. Like, that's not really what I'm doing for them. What I'm doing is creating safety, I'm creating time, I'm creating space, I'm creating autonomy, I'm creating empowerment. And this idea that, like, they can feel safe coming to a doctor and saying anything, like, I mean, I don't know about you, but our healthcare system is kind of a mess. So, like, that's not my personal experience going to the doctor all the time, even with all my privilege. So to create that solution where people can feel safe and heard felt really important. And that is really what I'm selling for them. And why am I the person to do it? Because I know what it's like to be on the patient end of things. And that's part of my story. So being able to clearly articulate that in these meetings, I think, is what they will describe as like an irresistible product. Like, people, that's kind of what I'm known for. And so because of that, more people are willing to refer their friends and family. And on a business end of things, we measure all kinds of things in business, of course, like income and collections and number of new patients and all that stuff. But what I actually measure in addition to those traditional things is those metrics. How likely are you to refer a patient, a friend or family to me? How safe and affirmed do you feel in my practice? And, like, that's the stuff I actually care about, because if those numbers are great, like, the rest is going to fall into place because people will say, of course, I want to send someone to you. So understanding that patient journey is, like, absolutely critical in building those relationships that are going to send the patients in the door. And in 3 years, I've paid $0 in marketing until literally last week, where I put an ad in a low magazine. But that's it. But $0. It was 100% relationship building.
I love this. I have a lot of follow-up questions. The first one is, I want to kind of break it down a little bit. You mentioned how you did coffee meetings or one-on-ones, conferences. There was one other one you mentioned that I didn't get a chance to write down. Tell me a little bit more of the one-on-one based. I'm assuming a little bit of networking, the coffee dates. Who are you meeting with? Were you looking for certain types of events? Let's start kind of with those.
Yeah. So part of it was understanding who my ideal patient is, which in my case was an adult who had disordered eating or an eating disorder, and how would they actually find me? So traditionally, they're not talking to their doctors about it. They're talking to a therapist or they're talking to a dietitian. So I specifically called every eating disorder dietitian and therapist in town and said, hey, I'm Kara Pepper. This is what I do. I would love to be able to get to know you and know who to send your way, right? It's a two-way relationship. Who do you love taking care of? And I would meet with them, building that relationship and getting to know the people in the community so that I can support them and they can support me, help build that practice. So that was kind of the one-on-ones. And then being of service. Like, I don't want to be available 24 hours a day clinically, but if a doctor or therapist or a dietitian calls me, like I answer the phone, like how can I help? Like truly, if you're calling for help, I know you need help. Like, how can I be helpful? Having that core value of service has been a big part of relationship building, but also how I manage the practice. And I think that resonates with a lot of people who are frustrated. And then getting involved in communities. I knew I was a solo practice doc, so I created a community here in Atlanta, where I'm located, of every solo practice doc that's in town. A lot of them take cash pay patients too. So like, hey, here we are all, we can all support each other in that way. Like, I know you may not be an eating disorder specialist, but I know that you're a plastic surgeon who takes care of patients who probably need a good PCP. So like, let's network in that way. So I created environments for people who are similarly in that same space, and then signed up or participated in specific organizations that were geared towards the types of patients that I take care of. And it's not that hard, right? It's this is not a cerebral thing. It's literally, how can I be helpful? That I think alone is very helpful.
It's funny. I just launched my I Need Patients yesterday course. And essentially, like I teach a little bit of everything more to kind of get people thinking outside the box of how they can make connections. And I put that there's 4 general natural sales styles. And so one of the things I actually talk about, which you're affirming, is making those relationships. One was called referral-based partnership. And so it's making those relationships. And I absolutely love that you said you thought, where can I connect with the people I want to work with? And that you reached out to the dietitians, you reached out to the therapist. And I think that's really amazing, because essentially I was saying something similar like that, like who can you connect with or interlock with that kind of serve a similar person as you? And that way you can really give them that continuity of care. I'm also really interested in the conferences, because that's something I actually mentioned as well, like people that want to be able to speak, applying to be a speaker. Can you tell me a little bit what that process has been like for you to be able to kind of get a little more exposure and kind of being that authority figure in what you do with your niche?
Yeah, I think you just ask the same way as you asked me to be on this podcast, for me to say, hey, I hear you have a conference coming up. I'd love to speak. These are 3 topics I'd love to speak to your audience about. Does that fit with your agenda? Like, just ask. Like, truth is, on the flip side, if you're running a conference, you're looking for people, right? And if you don't know what you don't know, like people, so in allowing people to find you, I think is helpful. And it wasn't like I was asking for any conferences. It was very specifically like, where are my patients? Where are their referral sources? And where are those people hanging out? So I'm not going to Nebraska, where I'm not licensed to speak at a conference. I'm asking in my local communities or in regional conferences, or industry specific conferences. And when you try to be everything to everyone, you're kind of nothing to anyone. So, not to get too like marketing bro about this, but my brand is that I'm an eating disorder doc, even though I still consider myself a primary care doc that does all the things a primary care physician would do. So when someone says, oh, I have an adult with an eating disorder, like my name is the name that shows up, because I've kind of made my reputation that way, saying these are the things that I do, and speaking towards those things. And these environments like conferences or meetings is incredibly identifying for the services that you offer, and increases referral rate towards you. And then I would just host webinars. Like, I probably do it not even that frequently, twice a year maybe. And the last one that I did, 1 hour of me talking about a topic that I love taking care of. And I have gotten dozens to 100 of referrals from that, just by saying like, hey, this is what I do. I know you're seeing these patients. This is what you should be looking out for. Happy to help you. I think often people get talked into these like really complex or high ticket marketing packages. And while there are times of scale, there are times of expanse where you may need that, where you're in a growth phase. I would encourage people who are starting out that it's not that deep. Like, it really is just about relationships and being very clear about who you are and who you want to serve, so that you're the name that shows up when people need to send someone your way.
I really like that. A couple of more follow-up questions on specifically the conference. You said industry specific. Were any of these ever like people that maybe had eating disorders that you ever spoke, or was it always more like with other referral type partners?
I haven't until today. It's funny that you brought this up. I would say until today, the answer is I'm not speaking directly to patients, because I know that's not a high yield thing for me. It is, where are all of those people getting funneled into? And in my case, that happens to be therapists and dietitians. Let's say if you're A pediatrician, for example, you're not going to go to a school and talk to kids, but you probably will go to the OBGYNs because moms are the decision makers about where that kid ends up going for their own medical care. So like you'd show up at mom events, you'd show up at preschools, you'd show up at the local tennis club, you'd show up in the PTA meetings, like you'd show up where your ideal client is. In that case, it's like the mom who's the decision maker. So for me, the people who send referrals are typically other clinicians.
I want people to start thinking outside the box. And like you said, people aren't taught to market. I don't think many people even know how to market. It doesn't matter what kind of business you open if you don't come from some kind of sales and marketing background. I personally did come from a sales and marketing background by accident. My dad was a real estate agent and a mortgage broker. So I was just kind of raised in the world of real estate since I was 6. So I was always listening to my dad sell constantly. So I was probably one of the few that was raised with that constant, like that background. But I did notice over time, like that was something that, like I told you before, that I kept hearing, like, how do I sell? How do I market? How do I talk to people? Where do I find people? And everything you are saying are literally things I would say like that. And I also tell people like the things that you learn, how to find who you're serving, pretty much how do they benefit with working with you. And all those things essentially can be applied across several types of industry, not just healthcare. And I think I wish more people knew that. I think sometimes people think it has to be a certain type of way, but I think more than anything, it's like what you said. If you know who you're serving, who are you the expert for? What do they benefit working with you? Because people care more about what am I going to gain by hiring you or investing in you. Also, like you are in this pay as you go. When did you make the decision to get licensed in 16 other states? Was that something you already had done, or was it something like, okay, I want to expand and scale? So you started working on those licensures?
Yeah, so I'm here in Georgia, so that's my primary state license. But as I opened and I knew I was doing telemedicine and I wasn't starting from scratch, I had a clinical base of patients already. I knew that I had patients in surrounding states. So I said, let me just start with a local one. So Tennessee, North Carolina, South Carolina, Florida, and Alabama. And then part of starting a business, you have to know how to fund yourself. And I don't have a trust fund. So I had to have a job. And so I still do actually consulting work on the side. I had done telemedicine through a third party. And so one of the consulting jobs that I have is a big nationwide insurance-based eating disorder platform. And through them, they wanted me to get licensed in others. So it was a way to like offload the frankly mental labor and the cost of getting licensed. And so they paid for those additional licenses and continue to do that. It's one of the benefits for me to continue to do that consulting work. Then I had these licenses, and then more people started to come see me from those states in which I'd licensed. I think if I had to do it over again, I don't know that I would have done it a lot differently in the beginning. I think if I didn't have this third party paying for all these other licenses, if that comes to an end, I'll probably scale back to the places where I have the highest yield just because the math has to math. Like I don't want to spend $1,000 a year on licensing in a place if I don't have a patient to make that make sense. So I have people who ask me that question, oh, should I get all these licenses? I'm like, how are you going to get patients from those states? And if you don't have an active plan with someone who's going to pay the bills of that license, it doesn't make sense. Just focus on the territory that you're already covering.
I think that's great advice. I like that you kind of mentioned the math needs to math. Since we're on that topic, how did you kind of come up with the rate you decided to charge? Did you kind of reverse engineer it? Can you talk a little bit about how you came up with whatever fee you decided to charge?
Yeah, candidly, $350 an hour. This is not a secret. You can find it directly on my website. There's price transparency, health is health, financial health is health. So I'd done market research. I thought, who are the people I would be sharing these patients with? Therapists, dietitians, psychiatrists. And I looked in my Atlanta market to see what people were charging. And my first stab at it, having no idea and also having no business plan because I had no idea what I was doing, I was like, oh, okay, like $250 an hour sounds like pretty good. And I looked around, therapists were charging more than that. And psychiatrists were certainly charging more than that. And I was like, oh, okay, well, I'm not even right. So there's market research as part of that. And then the second part was, as you mentioned, reverse engineering. Again, I don't have a trust fund, so I have bills that I need to be paid. And so I said, how much money do I want to make? And then how much is it going to cost to run this business? And then that's, X total dollars per year. I want to take 6 weeks of vacation at least per year. So that's 46 weeks a year. I'm going to work X number of hours a day times X number of days per week, and then just reverse engineer it. And that kind of put this number in around 350. And I panicked. I was like, oh my God, that sounds like so much money. Who's going to pay me that? I had all this mind drama about it. And so I just sat on it. You don't have to make a decision, just sit with it. And I talked to people who are already charging cash, and they're like, you should charge more than 350. They told me that 3 years ago. And I was like, okay. So I haven't increased my rates in 3 years. And my MBA husband is like, it's time. You've expanded your overhead. The math has to math. But I think you get to figure out one, what your comfort level is. I encourage people to get a little bit to that barfy place, because you probably need to charge more than you think you do, because you need to charge what you're worth. You got to make a living. But that business model, like I mentioned, like I was comfortable saying, okay, even though I feel a little barfy at 350, I know that part of that business model is that the people who really need me can see me for free. And that felt like this equitable place to land. So that's how I came up with that number.
I kind of want to pick your brain a little bit. How did you work through the mindset shift personally?
Yeah. So like I mentioned, I'm a coach. So I am great at coaching other people, but I still have my own blind spots. Talk to my coach. And I was like, I'm freaking out about this. This feels really terrible. So I did a lot of work with her. I also see a therapist as part of how I stay sane. And I talked to both of them about it. And so did my own work, and they had their own approaches about that. The other part was to get to a place, not out of ego, but to say, in order for me to continue to practice medicine, I have to not resent my job. And I really resented my job before. One of the questions my coach asked me was like, what would be delightful? What would just be like, you could not even imagine how much money you were making? And I was like, I would love to make like $500 an hour. And she was like, okay, then you should charge that. And if that doesn't feel right, then you need to figure out a plan to get you from here to there. Whether that takes you 20 years or that takes you 6 months, opening up the possibility that you are worth it. I could have charged less and been mad about it and quit my job in 2 years. Or I could have said, this is a sustainable thing that when I am well, I know that I'm going to show up and take amazing care of my patients, so that I need to be able to like have a business model that makes sense to me. And I just sat with it. I didn't have to make a decision overnight. And gradually I kind of got to this place that just felt like the right number for me. And so now I'm dealing with issues of scale, right? I need to hire someone. So what do I value them? How do I want to pay them? What does that mean about me? Is it time for me to increase my prices? So these problems, growth opportunities, as people like to call them, they don't go away. They just keep giving you an opportunity to reevaluate where you are. So it's been fun. It feels a lot different this time around than it did 3 years ago.
I like that. I want to ask you, because this is a question I hear, not even really marketing related, but how do you manage coverage when you are on those 6 weeks of vacation sprinkled throughout the year all at once, however you take it? Because I see that often a question that people ask. I'm solo, like, what do I do when I want to take vacation, right?
Yeah, it is in my contract when you sign up that says, I work 9 to 4, 5 days a week. I do not take call on nights or weekends. And I tell the patients when I'm on vacation, I'm on vacation. And I say this as someone who's worked in an ICU, who's worked in the hospital, and who took call for 100,000 patients in my previous practice when I was on call. If you call me at 2 in the morning and I'm just on the phone with you, it's either something that could have waited. It doesn't need to be called in the middle of the night, or it's something that you're so sick, you need to be going to the hospital. But I understand that there's value in me being able to triage, but I'm not really doing anything. I knew I would resent being on call 24 hours a day. And so I just built a practice that was like, this is how I operate. I do not take call. And if that's problematic, that's okay. If you need someone who's on call for you 24 hours a day, there are concierge medicine doctors for that. That is what they are for. I am not that person. And I felt that was like a non-negotiable for me. That felt very compelling. I have since, as I've grown my practice over the past 3 years, it's hard. Like I do feel guilt. I'd be lying if I didn't say I felt nothing about that. And so part of hiring someone is to say, even if I were not taking overnight coverage, how does someone just like check the email box? Granted, I have a virtual assistant. I have a whole team of people who work for me. But I do think having clinical coverage. So I'm hiring someone. That's one solution. I also have a network of solo practice docs, like I mentioned. And so we have a network that can cover for each other. Hey, I'm really going to be gone and I really do not want to bring my computer. Can I pay you for the week? Can we do an exchange? It's another option that I've employed. And then lastly, sometimes I just tell the patients, hey, I'm going to be going on vacation, but I'll bring my computer. I'm checking emails once a day. I'll manage the emergent stuff, and then I'll deal with the non-urgent stuff when I get back. And I think more than anything, there's so much mistrust between patients and our healthcare system. And I think when you treat people with honesty and fairness and transparency, people get it. Like my patients don't expect me to be a superhero. I think they understand. And we celebrated our 20-year wedding anniversary back in the spring. And I told them, like, thank you. I said, like, listen, like, I'm not bringing my computer. Like, I'm really not. So good luck. No, that's not what I said. But I was like, I'm going to be gone. And everyone sent me these well wishes. Like, thank you so much. We're so excited for you. We'll see you when you get back. So I think any of these problems, there's no perfect solution. But at the end of the day, you have to have a relationship with your business the same way you'd want a healthy relationship with any partnership, my spouse, my children, my friends. And if I feel like I'm always getting the short end of the stick, it's not a healthy relationship. And so I wanted a business that felt like it was healing for me and healing for my patients. And I think that resonates with the people I take care of.
I love that. I think it's like you said, setting the clear expectations. I think that's a really good way of kind of putting it. I've told people I've been a DPC patient and I've had my doctors take vacation. They just send an email out and I never get upset. Like I'm like, okay, good, have fun. Like I'm pretty like I've never been through anything so urgent that I needed them right away, you know?
Yeah. Or truly, if it is an emergency, like that is what urgent cares and ERs are for. Like that is what they are designed to do, right? And we cannot possibly be everything to everyone all the time. We just can't. It is not healthy.
I think it was a good example of just like having that healthy relationship, even with your work. And I also like that you said you had that non negotiable. I think when we start a business, you know, I mean, we've all been there where we want to always answer right away, or we feel like the stress to like, oh my God, if I don't answer, they're going to get upset, or what are they going to think? I struggled with that personally a lot when I was younger. And then I learned to set better expectations and said, hey, this is when I can communicate as well. This is, I don't work the weekends, even though technically I do, but I don't answer any calls on weekends. The only time I can concentrate on my projects. But I did want to ask you two main questions. One is I know you do mainly pay as you go, but do you offer any packages for those that want to kind of like do a program with you? Do you offer any programs or is it just pay as you go?
My current model is still pay as you go. And I think this gets back to that place of knowing who you are serving. And when people come to me, they are generally in crisis and they need a lot of high touch medical care. And their typical trajectory, and this is the people that I know that I serve, they need a lot in those first 3 months. And then they don't typically need a lot after that. And so I could never find a model that accommodated that. It either meant I set the price point low and accessible, but then they're paying me for the months that they're probably not using or that they ended up in the hospital or whatever. And that didn't feel right. Or I could set the price point high enough, like, okay, it's going to be really expensive for 3 months, but that's how that goes. And that didn't feel right either. I really, truly wanted patients to have autonomy. It's one of my core values. And every person that I personally coach, I'm like, you need your core values to show up in your practice. And for me, autonomy is one of those. I really did not want patients to feel beholden. I understand it as a business model. I understand it works very well for many people. It does not work well for the people that I serve. So it's nothing that I ever did. But I have lots of friends who are in DPC. It makes total sense for them. So you got to know what you're doing.
I like that. It makes sense because, like you said, someone might need you 3 or 4 times, someone might need you 2 times. And so you wanted it to feel fair for the people you serve. So that makes total sense. Can you tell me a little bit about your website? How did you go about? Did you hire someone? Did you do it yourself? Did you write your content? Can we talk a little bit about what your messaging is like on your site?
Yeah. So I started a coaching practice 7 years ago. I was still working at my previous practice. And so for the first 4 years that a website existed, it was homegrown. It was plug and play through Wix. I personally designed it. It was not fancy. And when I finally was going to integrate my clinical practice in with my coaching practice, so I have these two arms in my business, it's like, it's time. I need like an actual adult to do this for me. So I hired a website designer for the first time. And she also was very mission driven, which I really liked about her. And she designed the website in that iteration. And it was great. She was very technically proficient, but wanted me to do the content. So I was still writing a lot of the copy myself. And then this recent upgrade this year, so this is what, like upgrade 5 over 7 years. This was the biggest purchase I've made for my practice outside of malpractice insurance because I really wanted it to feel like this robust experience. Story brand, you probably know that brand, but it's very much like heart centered. And so it was a story brand website designer. And so they spent a lot of time, a lot of market research, a lot of SEO stuff, but a lot of time just with me, like listening to the way that I talk, listen to the way that I want to communicate, talking about core values. They sent me home with homework, not, hey, write this copy, but like, tell us what you would tell a patient in this situation, right? And so they used all of those words to help build content for the website, which I thought was really great. And I was really pleased. And in fact, I still had my original website was kind of like a choose your own adventure. You show up at carepeppermd.com and you could either click for patients or click for physician coaches, coaching clients. And this newest iteration, they're like, it's time. Like you have two different businesses. You need to make it separate so people can get what they need separately. And your message is really clear. So I really appreciated having a professional help me in that way, because that's not something that was on my radar.
I've listened to the book and I'm very familiar. And that's essentially kind of what I do. I do like a 45-minute, 60-minute discovery call. And during that, I ask a lot of questions and I get a feel for the personality, the way they speak. And you definitely then we then take that whole personality and their vision and what's important to them and put it into the words and the messaging. And then also the visual, the aesthetic, what are they drawn to? How do they want to be perceived? Who is the audience that you want to attract? Because a lot of the design aspect and the fonts you use and the colors you use also have a lot to play with how people are drawn to your site. I definitely love that you also said in the 7 years you had 5 upgrades. I do like the growth that you kind of went in between before you made that investment in creating your final version. Is there any advice you would give someone that is starting off? Maybe they've started, maybe they're struggling. What would you say to that person?
Yeah, two things. Our inner critic / inner imposter gets really loud when we do anything new. This uncertainty plus shame equals imposter syndrome is a real thing. So if you're doing something new for the first time, building a new practice, starting a new business, you don't know what it's like. You've never done it before. It doesn't mean you're doing it wrong, even though your brain may get really loud about it. So just understand that this like uncertainty is part of the process. It does not mean that you need to reverse course and go back to the job that you're miserable in. Just expect that your inner imposter is trying to keep you safe. That's their job. And you just put them in the backseat of the car and keep driving. That's it. Secondly, community is everything. It is really lonely to like be an entrepreneur and try to manage the day-to-day ins and outs. So to be in a community of people, I think is wildly a part of my success. And I have a lot of communities. And I say that as an introvert who would love to nothing more than to talk to no one at the end of my workday, but to have a physician community who's doing what I'm doing. I'm in a business community of women here in Atlanta. I'm the only physician, but it's just so interesting to see how everyone else thinks outside of medicine. I'm in a specialty specific community of docs all over the country who do what I do. And so for all of those communities, it feeds my soul and helps me keep moving. And I don't, as a fiercely independent person, I think I've got to figure it all out myself, but I don't. Everyone else is trying to figure out the same thing. So it lightens the load a lot. So put your inner imposter in the back seat and make sure you're plugged in with people who really get it.
Thank you so much for your time. We appreciate you saying yes, because it means a lot to me to have you. And I think you gave amazing information.
Thank you. I'm happy to help. I really am. I think it's great. And my intention is really to like help other people. This is truly how we reinvent healthcare, is by helping people recognize it's not that hard. Like I think particularly for physicians, I'm like, you literally save lives for a living and you think setting up an LLC is hard? Like, stop it. Like this brainwashing that we've all been accustomed to is really harming us. It's harming our patients.